Morrissey.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for the second time in 2 years, a small group of members from the majority party in subcommittee have killed either a bipartisan or a nonpartisan bill dealing with redistricting. No, I find it ironic that one of the members of that party, the chairman of the Republican Party, has promoted a manifesto that promotes the inclusivity and responsiveness to voters. Here is a situation where voters in the Commonwealth overwhelmingly support a bipartisan or a nonpartisan commission to do redistricting. But in a subcommittee, we continue to kill redistricting, absentee voting, and early voting. And it appears to me that the only reason to do that is that instead of promoting the interests of Virginians, we promote the interests of our own parochial interests when it comes to getting reelected. I borrowed the copy of the Constitution from my friend, Mr. Delegate from Prince William County, a few moments ago, and the Constitution says, every electoral district shall be composed of contiguous and compact territory. Mr. Speaker, would you like to know what my district looks like? Okay, I'll tell you.
Wait till you see what it looks like after 2011. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
I know you are, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a wonderful district.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry. Who will be drawing the lines then?
Yet to be seen. A computer.
Mr. Speaker, I have a wonderful district. It includes the northern part of Henrico County, huge part of eastern Henrico County, all of Charles City County, Mr. Hogan, part of Prince George County, and Hopewell. But in Prince George County, Mr. Speaker, I don't have any residents. I have a patch of dirt. And my district includes Prince George County, so it can link up to Hopewell, and it's anything but compact and contiguous. There are a lot of districts that are like that, and they're done to promote somebody's getting reelected as opposed to being consistent with the constitutional mandates. Mr. Speaker, I know that there are two things that are guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed. Number one, someday, maybe next year, the minority party will become the majority party. And then someday, the other party will reassume and become the majority party. We ought to realize that fact and adopt and embrace a nonpartisan redistricting commission. Mr. Speaker, I pledge to you and the other members of the House that next year, I'll make this same motion, and I hope that all 49 members of the now majority party will join me in that motion and support nonpartisan redistricting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Suffolk, Mr. Jones.
Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
I enjoyed the gentleman from Henrico's remarks. I think it's been very clear to anyone that's been in these halls for the last 12 years where I've been on that issue. I've voted voice vote. I've recorded my vote on the board on that item, and I believe that it should lie with the legislature. Just a few facts I'd like to point out. In 2001, the Republicans were in control versus 1991. We split less precincts, we split less jurisdictions, we had a tighter deviation to make sure that we had compact and contiguous districts where we could. We tried to make sure we had a community of interest, and we had issues we had to deal with minority, majority districts. And I would challenge anyone to bring a plan that shows that you can have competition in all 100 seats because of the geographic nature of our Commonwealth and because of the voting patterns of our Commonwealth. And you'd be hard-pressed in Arlington to find a Republican seat, I do believe. So I would just say to the gentleman that my position has been very clear, and it's been in the paper. I think today, I haven't read the editorial, but it should lie with the legislature as it has for generations. And whether we're in the majority or in the minority in 2 years, I feel like it should lie with the legislature.
Gentleman from Spotsylvania, Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I'd just like to point out a couple of things regarding some issues that were raised. One is that we do have a bipartisan committee set up to help with redistricting. That's the Joint Reapportionment Committee, made up of 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans from both the House and Senate. And also regarding the question of early voting, that proposal was made and pushed hard by the governor. However, the governor failed to provide any funding for the local registrars to actually implement early voting. I heard from dozens of registrars across the state that said, do not pass this bill unless you're going to provide a significant increase in funding for registrars to allow them to hire additional staff, purchase additional equipment, and get additional facilities to handle early voting. Of course, everybody knows the budget situation this year, and there simply was not funding money available to provide a boost in funding for registrars. So this, if we would have passed this would have been probably the biggest unfunded mandate that the state had passed on localities in decades, especially during a very tight budget time when localities are struggling to make ends meet and are having to cut their own budgets. So I think it would have been irresponsible for this body to pass out any type of expansion of early voting. And I really think that it was made really for the proposal was made for political purposes rather than actually to expand voting in Virginia. Thank you.
Gentleman Chesapeake, Mr. Spruill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of personal privileges.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, the members of the House, I want to speak about the redistricting. I want you to know that for the first time, Mr. Speaker, it's not rarely that I do agree with the Republicans, you know that. But for this time, they got it right to kill that bill. And I will vote with them every time. Talking with Delegate Chris Jones, Mr. Speaker, in 2000, when we drew the line, 2001, whatever it was, and I was with Delegate Chris Jones. So you would know, Mr. Speaker, my favorite delegate is John Cosgrove. The rest of y'all I can put up with. But in 2000, when the line was drawn, and we drew the lines, and Delegate Chris Jones and I talked about it, and we had members on this side of the aisle, who came to me and asked me to get with Chris Jones to fix districts for them, and they were Democrats. And I said to them is that I don't want to change it because from those of us of the Black Caucus, we would be crazy if we would not support Republicans on what they're doing. Because look at where we have put it at, Mr. Speaker. All the members of the Black Caucus, majority of us, either from the Richmond area or Hampton Roads. And I question to my colleagues who are Democrat, since Northern Virginia is the heaviest part of Democrats in the state, how come we only have one block in Northern Virginia? And that's predominant Democrats, and they decide majority of the time who wins statewide elections. I also question to my colleagues, how come in the western part of the state, we only have one, my brother, Ozzie Ware? Why is that? So you want to draw a line that is fair? No, no, no. And I remind my colleagues, I have on my wall, 1800s, a group of 9 blacks who were elected 1 year. And next year, they were put out of office. They were put out of office by Democrats. So I'm saying to my colleagues, don't fall for it, is that we have a safe district, and if you divide us up, I don't care what you say, is that we have to protect the district, and I do applaud Republicans for one time looking out for black folks. Y'all do that right. I'll give you credit for that. And so I will support every time that you are voting against, whenever they're trying to do a redistricting bill, I will support you every time, and I hope that members of the Black Caucus, this time the Republicans are right. When they're right, we got to go with them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.